rescue. And when I was going to start my job, I was called by my new boss saying, "Can you start in time for the big cat rescue?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that'll be fine." I had no idea whether this was like just a big cat or...
Like a tabby.
Yes.
Or a Maine Coon cat.
And it turned out to be 24 tigers in a backyard in New Jersey.
Oh my.
Which we took out of quite appalling conditions and moved to a sanctuary in Texas. And I think one of the stunning statistics is that there are more tigers in captivity in the US than there now are in the wild. In the wild, tigers are extremely endangered, yet they are relatively easy to breed in captivity, and there are large numbers of them unregulated in the US. And I think this is the basis of the problem. You can buy a tiger cub for about the same price as a good pedigree Labrador. And people will do this, and in many states there are really no regulations to control how the trade in dangerous wild animals of all sorts is undertaken. And so people will buy a cub, which sounds like a good idea at the time. Then the cub grows, it becomes dangerous, it becomes often unwanted, or they can't afford to keep it anymore, and then it becomes a problem. And that's often where we get involved, trying to find sanctuary for these animals which people can no longer cope with.
Now, I'm a law school professor, and one of the things that I have great interest in is animal welfare. So I'm aware more than the general public about the problems with respect to animals in this country. Approximately 3 months ago, I found out that people had in their backyards in Texas and other parts of the country tigers. I was shocked. Shocked is an understatement, really. I wonder what people think when they decide that they're going to keep a tiger in their backyard. To me, common sense should tell you that you cannot keep a tiger like you would keep a cat or a dog.
Absolutely, and wildlife belongs in the wild, whatever it is.
Does.
But people do get attracted by the beauty and the grandeur of these animals, and there is that acquisitive streak in people which wants to own. You know, they want to own and want to have one of these animals for themselves, and they don't really consider the implications of that. Keeping wildlife like tigers in captivity is an extremely complex, expensive, and specialized business, and should be left to those organizations like zoos that have the wherewithal to try and do it properly. And often the result of trying to do it and not being able to do it properly is these animals end up needing a home, and that's where the sanctuary community of the US comes in to try and rescue these animals and give them a good environment for the remainder of their lives.
My understanding is many of the sanctuaries now are full, and because we have such a problem in the United States. So I would imagine that it's quite hard when you get a call that there are a number of tigers in a backyard somewhere that are being kept in horrible conditions. You need to find a way to go in and rescue them, but then you also have to relocate them somewhere. So walk me through what it's like to relocate a tiger.
Well, it is a tremendous problem because, particularly in this time of economic recession, it's becoming more and more difficult for the sanctuaries who are providing for these animals to keep going. In fact, there has been a recent case of a sanctuary gone bankrupt, and then the 100+ tigers and lions and other big cats that they had in sanctuary had to be farmed out throughout the whole of the US to other sanctuaries that could provide them with a decent home. And that was an extremely difficult, and it actually is still an ongoing process that we're going through. We haven't quite rehoused all of the tigers that they have. A sanctuary which takes on the job of caring for one of these animals and giving them a good home for the rest of their lives is taking on a tremendous burden, both financially and in terms of the care that's required. And this is a real problem. And the problem is there are more and more tigers being produced. Now, one of the reasons for this is that people want to pet tigers. And so there is a market for people to handle and pet tigers. And it is still legal in this country to be able to handle and have the public interacting with tigers within a certain age group, which is sort of 8 to 12 weeks. Now, that's a very, very short time scale. So in order to have these animals to make a profit out of allowing the public to handle them, people will breed tigers, and then each of those tigers has to go somewhere. So they're sold as pets or whatever, and then those tigers get into trouble and end up in sanctuaries, but the whole time there's this big machine which is creating more and more animals which need help. And so it's a never-ending problem. The only way that this is ever going to come under control, and the only way it really is going to be stopped, is national legislation.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I sit here and I listen to you now, and it seems to me that it's common sense that we ought to not allow people to interact with tiger cubs between the ages of 8 weeks and 12 weeks, because that's a month. And so you must have people that are continually breeding tremendous amounts of tiger cubs so that they always have them available, because of course they can make money from doing this. And think of the life of the tiger afterwards, how sad it is. And of course now you're going to ultimately probably get called in to try to rescue what is an unsuitable pet from the backyard of somebody, and now you have to find a home. And the sad thing is the tiger ends up living in captivity for its life, and that is not an ideal solution to the problem.
Absolutely. And although each state is different, and some states have already outlawed the keeping of dangerous wild animals such as tigers by the general public, it does go state by state, and in many states it is still legal, and in many states you will find people who still acquire these animals as pets and then often keep them in unsuitable conditions where they suffer. There is also the significant danger, not only to the owner, but also to the public if these animals escape, or if people get in with an animal because they're not expecting there to be a tiger on the premises, these kind of things. So there is a considerable public safety issue involved with this as well.
The Massachusetts School of Law has a very dedicated animal law program. Here are two students.
Well, this summer we've been working on an internship together with another MSL alum, Rose Church, and it's in regards to captive tigers, and we're here to help create a multi-organizational effort to help combat captive tigers, and to ensure that they're not being brought around to all the different malls. Captive tigers are basically, captive tiger cubs are basically taken around to all different malls when they're between 8 and 12 weeks old, where they are petted, and just some horrible abuses are happening to these poor animals.
And what do you think personally you guys can do to help this problem?
Personally, I would like to make it more aware to the public about the captive tigers in the United States, especially in New England. I was shocked by the numbers, anywhere between 5,000 and 12,000 captive tigers, and I would like to make that more aware to the public.
I think that I agree with Caitlin. Education is really key at this point in time, because in New England we have no idea that this is going on, and as Caitlin indicated, there are so many tigers that are being held in inhumane conditions that education is really a key factor right now.
Now, I know you both took animal law. Have you worked on animal issues before?
I have worked at the local level. I've worked with a local shelter where I've helped foster dogs. I also created a program for people with disabilities where they collect donations and then take it into a shelter.
I, in high school, was on a wild animal rescue team, and we would take care of like squirrels and take care of eagles and hawks and different things like that. And then in college I was in an animal club and did things throughout the animal club. And now at law school I took the animal law class and hopefully helping the tiger situation.
It seems that it always takes a tragedy before people will see a problem and act. On Wednesday, October 19, 2011, 56 exotic animals, including lions, tigers, bears, giraffes, wolves, were freed from their captivity at a rural residence outside of Zanesville, Ohio. Police report that the animals' owner, Terry Thompson, let the animals out of their cages before he killed himself. When the carnage was over, 49 animals were slaughtered, including 18 Bengal tigers, 17 lions, 6 black bears, a pair of grizzlies, 3 mountain lions, 2 wolves, and a baboon. Only 6 animals 1 grizzly bear, 3 leopards, and 2 monkeys were captured alive and taken to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. This tragedy should not have happened. It is time to take action. Write or call your congressman and tell them we need a federal ban on keeping wild animals as pets. It's common sense. Tell your congressman to pressure the USDA to close the 8 to 12-week loophole. Volunteer, contribute to one of the many animal welfare organizations that you saw on this show. Finally, please, please do not pay to play with a tiger cub, and do not have your picture taken with a tiger cub. So until next time, be the voice for those who cannot speak. Become educated on the things that you care about, like this topic. And above all, you be well.
I think we have a really good case for getting them to close the window. And the reason is they say up into 8 weeks, the cat doesn't have sufficient immunology. And so what they didn't take, they got it partially right. They got it partially right in that the cat does not have a proper immune system. But the fact is, with domestic cats, as probably all of your people know, you give kittens shots at 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and 12 weeks before they're actually protected. It's the same way with tiger cubs. So they're not even protected until 12 weeks. USDA has already said at 12 weeks they're too dangerous for handling. So what we hope to present to them is to say, you guys got it right. They aren't protected, but they're not protected to the 12 week. And if we could just close that 4-week window, it seems like it would be such an easy thing.
It is such a problem at the state level, and because the states have been delegated the responsibility for controlling the trade in exotic animals and the keeping of exotic animals as pets. One thing we had great success in doing about 8 years ago was passing the Captive Wildlife Safety Act, which prohibits the interstate movement in big cats like tigers, lions, leopards, cougars, or even hybrids if they're going to be kept as pets. And so full enforcement of that law, which is not currently happening, would be a huge boon to stopping the interstate movement of these animals and really localizing the problems so that states and communities can actually address the problems themselves. I think the other thing we need to do is focus on those states that still allow the trade, go to those state legislatures, show the incidents that have happened in their states that have been problematic, where children have been bitten or otherwise hurt, show the number of people that we think are keeping tigers in those communities and why it's a risk, and urge them literally one by one to change the state law so that there won't be any communities left in the country where these animals can be procured.
I think there's a number of things that we can do, and there's a multitude of options on the table, but they're all difficult. It's a difficult slog all the time, trying to pass federal legislation, trying to pass regulatory change at the state and the federal level. I think that obviously the holy grail in all of this would be a ban on the private ownership of big cats, with certain exceptions for obviously reputable sanctuaries, potentially for circuses, for zoos. We don't have an organizational position on that at this point, but there are clearly a lot of options out there that can help address this issue, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Without strong both federal and state support for proper and sensible legislation to control the ownership of dangerous wild animals, including big cats and specifically tigers in the US, this will continue and will be a constant problem.
So for the people for the US government and for the people in the US, they need to be aware of, if they really care about tigers, then we need to have stronger laws, we need to have stronger position to keep tigers in the wild, to regulate, make sure that the tigers in captivity in this country do not go into illegal trade, and which stimulate a market demand, which fuels poaching of tigers in the wild.